Echoes from the Temple, a show exploring Thessalian traditions and ideas.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Echoes from the Temple. I am Monte, your host tonight, here in the studio with Justin Cottrell. And tonight, we've got a special treat for everyone. Tonight, we're going to have a discussion with the eminent Professor Gregory Shaw, author of the book Theurgy and the Soul, the Neoplatonism of Iamblichus, and a personal idol of mine. And we are extremely excited for this, so let's get right into it. I mean, I've been pouring through on Academia EDU all of the papers that you have, which some of them you had sent me before in email, but there was a few that I didn't, and I've been pouring through them, and that's where I got Calvinus.
Yeah, Calvinus Taurus, the
Yeah.
Middle Platonists that I read about through John Dillon. But before we jump into more specific, exploration of some of these things, I just wanted to get a little bit of sense from you two. You both got a community, it sounds like, of people who study this stuff. Do you have regular meetings? Can you tell me at all about who you are and how you operate?
Oh, yeah. We've been a legally recognized religious organization since 1994. The name of the group is Church of Thessaly, which is named after the region of Thessaly, which was considered to be the birthplace of magic. I'm sure you know that.
Yep.
And we have regular meetings. We have what we call the Olympic cycle, which is every month we have a temple gathering where we perform a Canonia ceremony, which is a theurgic ceremony devoted to one Olympian. And we'll do that either twice a month or once a week to commune with that particular divinity. And it'll rotate through with we have Dionysus as 1 month instead of Hestia, because we honor Hestia at every single ceremony first. She always gets first precedence. We also have holidays. We have our Anthesteria, our Thesmophoria festivals, all based off of historical research, but with a modern interpretation of it. We focus less on the academic view of it being agricultural festivals and more on the idea of communing with divinity, which is what Iamblichus says. Everything that we do, our entire philosophy that we teach the students, is through the Platonic dialogues in the order that the Neoplatonists requested, or the order that they usually studied them in.
Right. Which was set up by Iamblichus.
Right, exactly. We follow his order, his curriculum. I also, in my past, I was an initiate in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn many years ago, which is where some of this stuff I was introduced to, some of this stuff back then. So
that's the Crowley tradition, correct?
Yes.
I've developed and he has had a lot of bad press, as you know.
Yeah.
And I recently read a book, which I think you guys might like, called The Subtle Body by Simon Cox.
I have it in a list already.
Yeah, I think I may actually have that one.
There's a chapter on Aleister Crowley and his way of developing the subtle body. And it's a very respectful and appreciative view of what Crowley did. I think you might like that.
That would actually probably be the exact same technique that I teach here, because that's what we learned in the Golden Dawn, was the development of the subtle body,
the body of light.
Right, which is the Avgoides. So, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
The Algoides, you mean? That body of light.
I'm I'm always with my pronunciations between the modern Greek, which I'm learning, and then ancient Greek is a bit different because it's still got the dative and all the other stuff in it.
Yeah.
So my
Well, the way I
pronunciations
say
are
it is
off.
algoides. And
Algoides.
what I used to tell my students is when you're in doubt about how to pronounce a word, just say it with a lot of energy and everyone will think you're saying it right.
Because yeah, I know in modern Greek the AU is usually either pronounced av or af.
Oh,
It could
uh-huh.
be
I didn't know
AV
that.
or AF depending on where it's at in the word. It's a bit confusing. Um, so I was always, and most of my knowledge comes from reading. So I uh, I don't have a pronunciation guide or like a professor to show me. I haven't had any classical studies. I got my degree in psychology back in '93.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was the last time I was in an academic setting. So,
Well, so you've got a group, both of you have these
Hmm.
groups,
mhm,
and you have this Olympic cycle. You do rituals that tune you into the divinities.
using
Um,
the synthemata and the symbology.
yep,
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 yep.
okay.
Hmm.
Are you familiar at all? Just this is an aside, but there's a fellow in England by the name of Tim Addy, and he runs something called the Prometheus Trust.
Yes, yes, I'm
Oh,
familiar with Prometheus
yes.
Trust. Yeah.
Good
And they're
stuff.
really good people, and
Pierre.
they're not unlike you. They're focused a little bit differently.
Hmm.
Um,
What's his name?
they're a little
Pierre.
bit more, I would say, a
Grimes.
kind of cerebral.
Pierre
Uh,
Grimes
uh,
is involved with that, right?
oh, did Pierre Grimes get involved with them? I didn't know that.
I believe
Um,
his work is published through them. I could be mistaken. I think so.
yeah, well, I don't know, but I know that the Prometheus Trust they handle all of Thomas Taylor's
Right, Thomas
books.
Taylor.
Yeah.
That's how I know it. I started
Yep.
ordering that collection from them. Yes, yes.
Yeah, they're good people, and they would be very in agreement with having a ceremony, some sort of rite
Hmm.
to enhance our own connection with these
Right.
presences and
Right.
intelligences. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that we teach this connection and how it works is the same thing. And he's already
Hmm.
shaking his head. He already knows
Yeah.
where I'm going with it. It's
Hmm.
it's uh, it's in stages of adoration, and then absorption, and then assimilation, and then apotheosis. And that's the four stages. So we start. Every student starts, and the way that this works, we have uh, at the time when I was talking to you before, I think we originally started talking because you were interested in my near death experience, if I remember
Okay.
correctly.
Yeah. If you would have shared that with me, I would have been interested. Yes.
Yeah, that happened when I was 13. We're actually working on a documentary for our group right now because we're both interested in film. So we're putting together like a documentary about our group. But when I was 13, I had a near death experience, which is what put me on this path.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying this in a way to like try to butter up, but there were 2 points in my life where there was a drastic change. That was the first, and the second one was when I read Theurgy and the Soul, where I had a sort of an awakening. Um, but
Cool.
this first
Cool.
one, I was riding bicycles and I had an accident and fractured my skull, I was out of body. I
Hmm.
had the I think it was the 360 vision that you and I were talking about before.
Hmm.
Um, it may have been somebody else, but I thought it was you. But
That sounds consistent. In any
yeah,
case, go on.
we were. I was explaining how the 360 vision when you're out of body is not really like a sight, but more of a knowing.
Hmm.
And so anyway, I was out of body and I'm looking down at myself, 13-year-old. I'm covered in blood. My skull's fractured. My jaws, teeth, nose, everything's broken. And the then I no sound, but then I hear this what I think would be the sensation of a sound. It wasn't really a sound, but it was like this whooshing kind of feeling. And there was a flash, and I was standing in a field of flowers, these yellow flowers that I could not recognize. They were looked like aliens to me, like some alien landscape. No sound, no nothing. And I believe I saw like maybe trees on the horizon, but I don't know for sure. But the yellow flowers stood out
Mm-hmm.
phenomenally well. And and then another whooshing sound. Then I woke up in my body, and my friends were there trying to check on me. And I grabbed one of my buddies, Bobby, and I said, "Hey man, can you see me?" And he's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Can you see me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see you." And I was like, "Okay, then I'm all right." So then I walked and I went, and my dad come got me and brought me to the hospital. And I had a fractured skull. I have epilepsy uh, now because of the head injury. Every now and then, not too bad. And it was pretty bad accident. And
Sounds terrible.
yeah, but I couldn't figure out what these flowers were. And so when I got out of the hospital, I got home and these flowers kept staying in my head, and I couldn't figure out. And I went on this quest because I was raised Catholic up until that point, and I was told that I should see these gates with St. Peter, and I'd see my dead relatives. I didn't see anybody. I just empty field with flowers, these weird ass yellow flowers. And I said I went on a quest, so I started studying Catholicism more in depth. I didn't find any answers there. I studied some Eastern religions and didn't find the answers I was looking for there. And eventually I came across a description in an ancient Greek mythology book about a place where the souls of the dead would go, or shades of the dead would go, called the Fields of Asphodel.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, the field sounds interesting, but what the hell is an asphodel? So I look up asphodel, and it's a type of daffodil. And when I saw the picture, that was the exact flower that was there, because I'd never seen that flower before at that time in my life, because they don't really grow out here in Louisiana. And it just looked weird, because there's this little cup sticking out of the front of it, and it was strange looking to me. And when I saw that picture, and it was a yellow daffodil, and I had the goosebumps right now, um, that was my answer. I was like, okay, so I started studying ancient Greek mythology and Greek religion and ancient Greek religion, and it just snowballed from there.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's how the church started. That's how it eventually started, because I traveled. When I turned 18, I sold everything I had, and I moved to Sedona, Arizona, because that was at the time the New Age capital of the world, and I wanted to get initiated into something. I was searching,
Mm-hmm.
and I joined an Alexandrian Wiccan coven, which was probably a bad mistake. And then I also found a group of Golden Dawn um, people there, and I got initiated into that and worked my way up to an Adeptus Minor grade in that particular order. And then they said I couldn't progress any higher until I had turned 25. I think I was 20 at the time, or 21 maybe. And so I moved back to Louisiana, and I kept searching, and I met people that wanted to learn what I had learned. And so I started sharing information, and the next thing I knew, I had 30 students, and I became a teacher, and I didn't even expect that to happen.
Wow.
Yeah,
This is a really good story.
yeah,
Uh, huh. Wow.
yeah. And then I discovered Iamblichus, I want to say in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't as life changing as it was until I read Theurgy and the Soul, which kind of you put it in a way that made me understand him better, because the
I see.
language, in De Mysteries is a bit thick.
Yeah, it's not
For real.
transparent.
Right, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
bit thick, so I was like, I kind of get what this guy's saying, but I don't know for sure. And then
Hmm.
you kind of confirmed some of the suspicions that I had of what he meant, and then some of them I was like, holy shit, I didn't catch that at all. And I was
Hmm.
like, wait a minute. This is coinciding with things that I've experienced in ritual,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
things that students have experienced in
Hmm.
ritual, and things that we've done. And it all came crashing down. So what I decided to do was I had a copy of the PGM, and I was working my way through that, trying to understand that more. So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit myself to a monastic lifestyle. I was in a position at that time where I could do that. I was living alone, and I had a 3 acre piece of land that I had all these shrines to all of the Olympians on. And I said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate myself from everything modern. I'm going to live like these people lived, as close as I can. So I shut off the electricity in the house. The only thing I kept on was running water. I cooked all my food over a grill, over a charcoal grill, and I lived in as much seclusion as possible for 2 years, and worked my way through a lot of the rituals in the Greek magical papyri. One of them I posted up on Academia Edu, where one of the first ones in the Greek magical papyrus, where you get the paradros, the spirit assistant.
Yeah, right.
And you're supposed to use a falcon, but I couldn't get my hands on a falcon, so I used a rooster. But you drown it in milk and then drink the milk at the sunrise, and the spirit enters into you. And I did this. I did all this stuff for 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
at the end of that period, I had this huge epiphany where it felt like my head had opened up, and all of this understanding just kind of got poured in. And out of that came an oracle that we use now from Hermes, who is my patron god. And we call it the Hermantic Oracle, and it uses tortoise shell, very, very similar to Ifa, and also based sort of through geomancy, through the patterns, the 16 patterns of geomancy. So it's kind of a blending of those two, but it's got its own interpretation. So whenever a student comes, the first ritual that they undergo is called the Thei rite, which is where they receive their matron and patron, their spiritual mother and father, and it's through the oracle that it's determined which god and goddess is going to claim them as their child, per se. They start their devotions to those two divinities, and then of course they go through the Olympic cycle and commune with the rest. But those two are like their parents, so you don't get to choose them; they choose you.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it's changed a lot of people's lives in a very positive way. I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know Justin's come a long, long way since he was a young man.
Yes. Tough, but worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
and then it goes in from there. There's a daily devotion that they do every day to those two their two Thei, and that eventually that's their adoration. And then as they commune longer, that energy starts to accumulate, and then the absorption starts to happen. They start to absorb some of that energy. It starts to change their lives a little bit. Then the assimilation comes later on. As they start absorbing, it starts changing them. It starts elevating their souls, just like Iamblichus talked about,
Mm-hmm.
until
Mm-hmm.
they achieve an apotheosis with those two divinities. And then you work your way eventually through the Olympic cycle up to henosis, where you hopefully commune with
Yeah.
the one.
The hope. The hope.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Uh,
Yeah.
I wanted
Wow.
to add, so on top of the ritual that we do,
Yeah.
we also get together twice a month for more of an educational type setting, classes, where we will go over information that will cover anything from energy work to reading any of the philosophical texts to on and on. We have a curriculum that we go through, but
Mm-hmm.
that's mixed on top of the ritual part. So there's the mind as well as the soul preparations.
So when you have these meetings twice a month, is it both groups all get together, or each one of you is running a different group?
Each one
Yeah.
running a different group.
Sometimes we will get together, but most of the time they're individual. He has his students and I have mine,
Yeah.
and we'll do them
We usually
separate.
get both groups together when we have a festival.
Hmm.
Yeah,
We all kind of pitch in and do a big celebration. I can send you some videos of the festivals. They're really fun.
Absolutely.
that would be cool. So, about how many people do you get twice a month?
What, you have,
I'm I'm at like 9 right now.
you're at 9.
Right.
I'm at about 15 or 16, counting my out of state and my out of country. I have a couple of interested parties in the UK, and I have one right now that may actually be moving to Athens soon, which would be great.
Athens, Georgia.
No, Athens, Greece.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gonna start a Taminos there. That's a dream come true for me right there, to have this tradition in Athens. Now I have contacts in Athens. Well, I used to have a contact in Athens. She sadly passed away from COVID a few months back. But I used to have a contact that was part of a group out there that was trying to reestablish the ancient Greek religion,
Hmm.
which is where
Well,
some of our information comes from.
all right. One of the themes that you said you were interested in sort of exploring
Mm-hmm.
was that passage from Calvinus Taurus, who said that the gods want to manifest themselves physically
Mm-hmm.
in human souls that are pure. I
Right.
think that's more or less what he said,
Right.
and I I think that's perfectly consistent with the Iamblichus's theurgical view.
Mm-hmm.
And what it suggests to me is that on the one hand, you've got students who are, as well as yourselves, moving through these stages of uh, adoration, absorption, assimilation, and then apotheosis. And as we go up, so to speak, metaphorically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
the deity is coming down.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've often tried to imagine myself into, or to try to invite people to imagine, is that it's not so much us engaging the divine, but the divine being able to look through our eyes and being
Precisely.
embodied through us.
S-
And that's a different approach than what you'll see in most dualist approaches to religious experience. I think you will see it in Tantra.
Yeah.
You won't see it so much in a Plotinian,
No.
Porphyrian sort of let's escape from this awful world.
Right.
But it is in Iamblichus.
Right.
And I think that it's such an unfamiliar way of imagining relation to the divine.
Right.
Instead of thinking that we're going up to it, imagining that the divine, we're inviting the divine, we're creating a framework, a receptacle, so that the divine can incarnate through us.
Right.
That's a big piece.
One of the things that you talked about in Theurgy and the Soul was, now make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly because I've been pronouncing it this way for years now, but Katochi. Divine, divine
Katoke,
possession.
is that
Katoke?
being possession?
Possession, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We experienced
How do you
that.
say it?
How did you say it?
I said Katoke.
Katoke.
And I think there's a chi there,
A CH.
followed by
Yeah.
an eta,
Yeah.
and it's represented by a ch.
Right.
But I say Katoke, but you know what? If Katoche has been working for you,
Yeah.
Right.
power, just stick with it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not uptight about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But
Well, I just want to
go
make
ahead,
sure.
What about it?
Yeah, I want to make sure we both are speaking about the same term. But
Sure.
But that phenomenon happens during our ceremonies quite regularly. And
Right.
one of the fascinating things about it, and Justin's been witness to it, is the something that Iamblichus talks about as well, is when that happens, when divinity descends and we rise to meet it, in the physical, that the physical body does things that it can't normally do.
Absolutely.
And I mean, they've seen me possessed by Hermes run up the side of a tree 20 feet in the air and just zip around like a speedy
Also,
Gonzalez. Yeah.
also something we've observed is that the physical appearance in a way seems to change.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how to articulate that, but it definitely looks different.
Yeah. My experience or my theory on that from the experiences we had is not that the body physically changes per
Right.
se, but that the energy that you're radiating out alters the people looking at you's perception of your physical being.
Well said. Well said.
And so what happens is
Yeah.
with Eros, I had a possession of Eros once, and I appeared to be much shorter than I really am, like much shorter. And people didn't realize it until after everything was finished and the ceremony was over. They all said, "Hey, wait a minute! Didn't he seem like he was like 4 foot tall?"
And quite the opposite with Hades.
Yeah, and then Hades is the exact opposite. It's way taller and bigger. It's absolutely incredible, but it's not a pleasant experience by any stretch of the imagination.
Could you
It's
say-
it's
could
it's
you say
pleasant for
more
the people who
about
watch
that?
it. Yeah, it's pleasant for the people who or
Experiencing it.
experiencing it, but for the person who's actually undergoing that possession, it's a bit taxing on the body.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Hermes will have me running around, and then I feel it after he's gone.
Or Dionysus will have you drinking
Yeah, Dionysus will have you
copious
drinking
amounts of wine.
enormous, ungodly amounts of wine, and also fire walking is another thing that happens quite often with Dionysus. If we have a bonfire, he'll walk right through it, like it's nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead.
tell me again the name of your groups. Church of Thessaly.
Church of
is that-
Thessaly is the legally recognized, and then it's broken down very similar to what I learned in Golden Dawn because I needed a way to organize it a bit. And I know most people today are like, I hate organized religion, but without organization, there's chaos. And I like, as a Neoplatonist, hierarchies really appeal to me. So,
Yeah.
so we have the group that I run is each individual group is referred to as a temenos, which a holy place, or temeni for plural, and so that constitutes its own autonomous group, but we're all following the same tradition, so it's recognizable as Thessalian, but it's he runs his group and teaches his students in his own way. He follows the curriculum, but he's allowed to add to it what he wants. He's allowed to, if he has a student that's showing merit, he can progress them a little faster if he wants to. It's set up almost like Greek city-states, essentially. But underneath the sovereign Temenos, which is the one that I run, which is the headquarters. And so everybody reports back to this particular headquarters, because we handle all of the legal paperwork every year. We file all the paperwork with the state and the federal government.
And the one I run is referred to as the Cladaria Temenos, and we're still Thessalian, like he
Right.
said, but we're that branch.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
like he was saying, we follow the same curriculum, but I have my own kind of loose way of going about it my own way if I want. And so his Temenos is patron to Hecate and Hermes, whereas ours patrons are Apollo and Demeter. And so we may differ in the sense that we will have a Thesmophoria festival and the Anthesteria festival, because we have Demeter set up at our Temenos, so we kind of handle over that particular traditions whereas he will embody some of the others.
Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
sovereign Tominos tends to focus more on the initiations into the mysteries, and the the training of the theurgist on a higher level, because of Hermes and Akate both being associated with the underworld and with initiation per se.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we focus in on that, whereas his Taminos will focus in on the mysteries similar to like the Eleusinian mysteries, um, or mysteries involving Demeter and Persephone. So those two festivals he talked about, the Anthesteria and the Thesmophoria, are 6 months apart, and that's one of them is when Demeter goes. I mean,
The
Persephone
ascent
goes
and
into the
descent.
underworld, and the other one is the ascent. Uh, so,
Right.
and those festivals are celebrated by every person, even if we have people who aren't. We have a lot of people who are in other states who don't have an entire group, and so they celebrate it in a solitary fashion. But those festivals are celebrated by all of us.
Right.
I am pretty much, I have to say, overwhelmed by what you folks are pulling off and achieving, and living. I wanted to ask a couple more questions here
Hmm.
too, and that is, do you do any sort of like uh, meditative or prayer practice in
Oh,
order to sort
absolutely.
of,
Yeah,
Daily.
yeah, daily,
yeah,
daily.
right.
Yeah, that's crucial. That's something that a lot of people, when they come into it, a lot of the people that we get, the new people, are coming from a Judeo-Christian background, and they have kind of an aversion to prayer until we start explaining to them the importance of it.
It's also a different type of
Right.
praying than they're used to.
Yeah. So once they understand what it actually does and what it's supposed to do, we have that. So that there's actually prayer beads that we
Yeah.
use, that we do the vowel chant, the 7 Greek vowels. I can send you. I have a YouTube of that chant. That's one of the probably the most important. And before ceremonies, of course, we go through all the purification processes that Iamblichus talks about, the fasting. The when I did the 2 year experimentation with the Greek magical papyri, I fasted to the degree that I think I screwed up my metabolism. I was hardcore at that point in time. Like, I was experiencing some phenomenal stuff, and I just could not get enough.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, I'm going to push this further. I'm going to see how far this can go, how far I can take this. So
Wow. I'm interested in seeing that YouTube of the vowel chant.
okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
It sounds
It's the
pretty
it's the
fascinating.
attunement order, right?
right. The
The
attunement order.
aligning.
Now we have a lot of orders for the 7 Greek vowels that we chant. Depending on the order that you chant them in, they create a different current of energy. Depending on, because each one's associated with one of the ancient planets, and so depending on how you chant it and what order you chant it, you can get a certain almost astrological type quality, and
An
vibrate
energy
to that.
current.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind
and
of.
change your vibration to that current. And I'm honestly still experimenting with some of them because I'm not sure exactly what they all do.
Was like
Oh no,
127.
it's no.
That
Hold on, the permutations are.
while he's looking that up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we also use chanting with the barbarous names,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
and different variations, of course, of that as well.
Right.
Oh
That's
Um,
wow.
all. That's all the permutations right there. You can see I got
well,
right here.
I just finished a few months ago, as I'm writing this book on Hellenic Tantra,
Hmm.
a chapter on divine names and mantras,
Right.
Hmm.
because I think they function in the same way,
Hmm.
both
Oh.
in the tantric tradition as well as in theurgic,
Hmm.
and that the names or the sounds have the agency, and that we, at least the way I characterize it, is that we are make the effort to become a receptacle through which the presence that's in the sound can express itself,
Hmm.
Right.
so that the sound itself, it has the agency. It's not like we're chanting, but we're being chanted.
You actually said that before in a don't remember who you were talking to. I was watching one of your or listening to one of your podcasts that you were involved
Hmm.
with, and you had said that you were in the desert. And
Okay, that was Earl Fontenelle.
yes, yes, and
Oh, he's a fantastic character, that guy.
yes, and I when you said that, I was like, I'd never thought of it like that, but that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
You take on almost this trance state,
Yeah, you lose
Yeah,
yourself in it.
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
hear yourself, but you're not really in control anymore.
I'll tell you something else I noticed with some of the barbarous names. Um, if you're interested, I can send you. When I was doing the 2 year experimentation, I worked with a lot of the barbarous names in the Greek magical papyrus, and some of the results that I had with them, and where I feel the energy is done. I can send you that information if you're interested.
I am. Is
Um,
this Justin saying this?
This is
no,
Monte.
no,
Oh,
that's
that's
Monty.
Monty.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
please do
can send
send
you
me
that.
that information about the barbarous names.
Yeah, but
Um,
what I find with some of them, as I'm chanting them and I'm losing myself in that, I'll get that the I know the Tibetan Buddhist monks do the
Hmm.
double voice.
yes,
That'll
exactly.
happen spontaneously a lot
Yes,
of times when
Right.
I'm doing those chants. It's like two people chanting it.
it's
Yeah,
incredible when you're experiencing it and you notice that it's happening. You're so focused that you don't really get to appreciate it until after.
yeah. And like you said, it's not that we're chanting, but being chanted. There's been times where I wanted to stop and
Hmm.
couldn't.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that sounds really. I'm really amazed to hear that you guys are embodying this tradition with as much focus and power as you are. Can I ask you another kind of question that it may seem a little bit more boring or pragmatic, but Iamblichus talks about needing to honor the material gods
Hmm.
before we can proceed to the noetic.
Hmm.
And I often feel like a lot of people, and I'm not thinking of you guys, but I'm thinking of a lot of people who have been attracted to Plotinus or attracted to spirituality. And now I'm thinking how I was earlier in my life. I wanted to just, suck up my whole being and spirit
Hmm.
and commune with the divine and really be detached from all of the troubles of this world.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think that sometimes we need to do that. I mean, when Monty, you were talking about living out there, out with no electricity for 2 years in seclusion like a monk,
Hmm.
you sort of, and I did this myself, you become completely detached from ordinary living.
Oh yeah.
And we need to do that in order to open up to something deeper.
Hmm.
But then in my own case, I discovered that I needed to return to or honor some of the constraints or material gods, the things that, and here's the part that's difficult. And this is I'm speaking autobiographically now, and I'm not suggesting this is true for you guys.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But I discovered that some of the motivation for my spirituality was motivated by a kind of neurotic need to get away from things I couldn't deal with
Right.
in my ordinary personality.
Right.
And so I was able to escape that by going into this sort of I'm a spiritual guy mindset above things and not dealing with the bullshit. And I realized after years of doing that I needed to get down out of my high elevated state, which also included a kind of celibacy,
Hmm.
um, and get back into the messiness of life. And anybody, and I'm sure you guys know this because you mentioned a girlfriend, if you're in a relationship with
Right.
somebody, it's by definition going to be messy.
Yeah.
And you're going to be fucked up and you're going to be unsettled and you're going to deal with all kinds of crap and stuff that it's just unavoidable.
it
Right.
it helps to have someone who understands and is participating in it as well,
Hmm.
so that kind of flack doesn't happen. But I think what you're talking about is a balance.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
things, you have to find that balance.
Yeah. Well, Iamblichus even talked, like you were saying, he talked about honoring the material gods, and it's not that matter in all its messiness is evil. It's necessary in its own way.
Absolutely. I'm
Because
becoming more and more convinced
Mhm.
that the way that the divine can come alive in us is not by lifting ourselves into some light world,
Mhm.
but by finding the presence of the God in my complexities and darkness,
Right.
Yes.
and 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 somehow relaxing and accepting and embracing those elements,
Mhm.
not to get rid of them, but to allow the divine presence, which is the
Hmm.
one itself, to to express itself even through that. Um, I think that Emerson, who is one of my favorite Neoplatonists,
Mhm.
has a poem called Music, and you might look it up. It's online. It's easy to find. It's just
Mhm.
called Music, but he talks about how the divine is singing even in the scud and the grub
Hmm.
and the dirtiness of
Mhm.
everything.
Yep.
And I've had to train myself to be appreciative of the ordinariness of life because I spent so many years focusing on becoming extraordinary. And there's nothing wrong with that. In
Right.
fact, I think that in some ways I am extraordinary. I mean, there's no getting around it.
Yeah.
When you get transformed by some of this stuff, you're not like your ordinary type of dude.
No, no, it's a
Yeah.
lonely path sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, right. But it's good to remember that you're also an ordinary dude as
Yeah.
well.
Exactly.
Um, and if we forget that, then we lose touch with the ground,
Right.
and that's important.
Mhm.
That's your Hestia. Why you shall
Yep.
always begin with Hestia,
Yep.
the hearth. She's right there, kind of humbly warming up everything and everybody.
Mhm.
At least that's how I imagine her.
That's how that's her thing. Every one of our households for Thessalians has a Hestia shrine in the kitchen.
She's got a bit of a bigger place than mine.
Yeah.
She's my matron.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. It sounds like you're dealing with that. If you got Hestia as your focus, she's going to keep you in this world, and
Mhm.
and instead of
Yeah.
becoming cold light, you'll be warm light.
Yeah. Both both of my so my patron is Hephaestus. So
Yes.
Both
very
fire.
She's
grounded,
Yeah.
very
okay.
fire,
That's
but very
wonderful.
grounded in the material of this home and hearth and this creative work with hands and the physical materials. So very much so.
And transformative as well. But you're talking about like grounding into the reality of dealing with the mess in the world, and I was smiling when you were saying it because whenever I have a student that comes to me and they're overwhelmed with life and they're like, I just don't know what to do, and I'll lean down and I'll look them dead in the eye and I'll say, you are a God trying to manifest in this world, so remember that and act like it. you know and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it gets their focus in, and it's like, stop for a second and understand. When you read Greek mythology, the gods, a lot of that stuff, they were messy just as much as we are,
Yes.
and
They
they're,
were definitions of messiness.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and so it's okay to be messy. They're sitting here telling you, hey, we're messy too, but we're also divine, because we're not exactly, we're not the one, we're not perfection, and we don't profess, you know I tell that to the students all the time. It's like they're relatable to us and they're easy to commune with, which is why I love the Greek gods so much, um, because they're messy, because I don't have to be afraid that if I screw something up that I'm going to be punished for it. And especially with Hermes is a character. But
Oh my God. Well,
yeah.
he's a liar. I mean,
Have you ever seen the movie The Odyssey with Armand Assante?
No, is it worth seeing?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. It's he plays Odysseus, and there's the scene where he's climbing up to go to Circe's lair to save his men, and Hermes flies up, and the guy they got to play Hermes was perfectly cast. He tells he tells him, he says, here, he says, if you eat this, she won't be able to transform you, and Odysseus is like, I'm not going to eat that. It's poison. And he's like, I'm giving it to you. And he's like, and then he goes, don't you trust me? And when Odysseus looks at him, he just gives this grin that you're like, don't trust him. It's like, it was just such a beautifully played scene. It's like there's just this little smirk of a grin, like, don't you trust me? No, I don't. I don't. Not all the time. No.
And Odysseus is a bit hermetic himself.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I should have actually checked that movie out.
Yeah.
What am I thinking here? You guys have built this a community. You do these things to stay grounded. Let me ask you. Maybe this is a material gods kind of question of a different sort. How do you make a living? How do you pay the rent? Do you have jobs?
Oh yeah.
What do you
Yes.
do?
I work in construction.
Okay.
And Justin has his own lawn care business.
Yeah. Landscaping, lawn care.
He literally came straight from cutting grass and took a shower at my house to get ready for this interview.
It's very. I think I can speak for his too. It's very humbling work. It's a physical, laborious type of work, but
Right.
it. I mean, it allows us to do what we're doing, and that's the only reason that. I mean, if I could do like in the old days and just hang up everything and devote my entire life to philosophy and this lifestyle and theurgy, I mean, I would.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to pay my bills, so
Yeah.
still got to work.
I think that it keeps you guys grounded.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And have you ever spent time with academics?
I have.
Ye- Not necessarily in this field,
Yeah.
but yes.
Yeah. I've been in contact with a few, but I'll be honest with you, and like I said, I'm not trying to really blow any smoke up your ass, but you're the first academic person that I've conversed with that I relate to, I guess,
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
things that you write, and I feel that that you get it. That like what Iamblichus was talking about, you have to experience certain things. I used to always ask myself, I was like, this guy's got to be practicing something. I was like, because he's too articulate about these details that I know what he's talking about, but I think somebody else reading might not catch that subtlety.
I think it's in both it says you have to experience to know what
Yeah.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
And
talked about that earlier.
listening to you talk and reading your stuff, we've both come to the conclusion that you must have experienced some of this to understand what you do know.
Well, I'm honored that you have that perception, and I think that it's true. Although I haven't had an experience like Monte with that near-death experience, and then realizing that you were translated to the fields of asphodel. I mean, what a fucking beautiful story that is, and how powerful transformative vision that was to shape your life. I mean, what a gift. And I'm sure that you've thought about that quite often, about
Every
what
day.
a gift it was.
Every single day.
And that whooshing sound that
Yeah.
you mentioned,
I-
that's consistent with what Iamblichus talks about when you're translated through the heavens. You hear, he calls it a roidzos, like the sound of the buzzing of bees, a whooshing, something like that. But
like a bull roarer.
I think
like
it
a
was
bull
rhombus.
roar.
Yeah,
Right.
we use bull roarers in
Oh, is
our
that the rhombus?
rituals. Yeah, the
Okay,
rhombus.
yeah.
Yeah, we use those in our rituals when we're
That's-
summoning the gods.
That's intense. If you're ever in the situation to experience one of our festivals or rituals where we're using a rhombus, the
Oh, you
air
do?
and the energy changes
Oh yeah.
just by the use of these. It
Now, where are
is
you in
incredible.
Louisiana?
We're in South Louisiana. I'm in Houma, and he's in the neighboring town of Lockport, which is my hometown. It's where I grew up.
Oh,
And I just relocated out here because, well, he was out here.
Yeah, I had to move back home, and he followed. I couldn't get rid of him.
um, if I'm ever down there, I'm for sure gonna come and ask if I can visit, and I would like to make my visit coincide with some sort of event that you guys have,
Sure.
We'll
because
make an event if
it
you're
would be
coming.
an honor to be
Yeah,
present for one of
yeah.
those.
We will make an event if you're coming.
Well,
That's
we
cool.
could send them any of the major
Yeah,
festivals.
yeah,
We have them all predated. So
yeah. I can send you some information. I think if you're interested in the the soul aspect,
Thesmophoria.
Thesmophoria would be the one.
Hmm.
Where Persephone goes into the underworld. That's one of our darker festivals, but it's definitely an intense one. It's not a
Yes.
celebration per se, but the
It's still
presence.
fun in
Yeah.
its own way, but it brings about a very somber but also serious mood
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
for the the myth of Demeter, being upset and missing her daughter going to the underworld. So
Right.
we kind of keep that energy and that mood the same,
Hmm.
but it is
The grief
incredible.
of losing the daughter to the underworld, right?
Right.
Right.
Right. The only light that we have in that particular festival is a tradition that we call the unsmiling stone,
Hmm.
which is one person is chosen, usually a priestess of Demeter, which would be Justin's wife, and she sits down, and the idea is that you have to try to make her laugh. And so, and I'm sure you're familiar with the myth of Balbo
Yes.
when she flashes Demeter and makes her laugh. So we have this part of the festival where everybody has to try to tell the dirtiest joke to try to make the priestess of Demeter laugh, and then we celebrate. That's the rest of it is, but there's not any heavy drinking at this. There's no drinking at all at this festival.
Hmm.
There's no celebration in that context. Now, Anthesteria, if you're looking to have some fun,
Yeah.
that's the one you want to come to when Persephone returns. We celebrate like there's no tomorrow
And the priestess of Demeter does not drink from Thesmophoria
until
till
Anthesteria.
Anthesteria. So
Right,
her first drink will be,
at
yeah,
Anthesteria.
and many of the other females, especially if one of their Theae is Demeter, will also do this.
Yeah, they'll abstain from drinking during the time that Persephone is in the underworld.
Hmm.
But we have a,
So
we have a whole procession where there's a mask that represents Persephone,
We have a
and
statue now too.
yeah, and we have a statue now. We have the life-size statue of Demeter as well. And during that 6 month, Demeter is shrouded with a black cloth so nobody can look at her. And then at Anthesteria, we take the mask and we bury it in the ground.
Yeah.
Um, and then at Anthesteria, we dig it back up, symbolic of her returning, and we do a procession through the whole Tuminos grounds. And then everybody celebrates, and then we take the shroud off of Demeter, and everybody gets to see her again for the first time, and it's a huge celebration.
The priestess will also clean and wash down the statue and everything prior. So
Right. Yeah, well, she's the only one that's allowed to see Demeter.
right.
The children of Demeter are allowed to see her between the time of Thesmophoria and Anthesteria, but not anybody else.
you have really, in many respects, you have created this practice from the ground up through your own deep intuition and your experience. You got a little help from Iamblichus, a little help from my book that kind of, I guess you could say, gave you a framework to give you confidence that what you were already inclined to do
Hmm.
was the right thing.
Hmm.
I kind of think that's how it works. When you're doing the right thing, then you can find some book that addresses it, and if it says it exactly the way that you already sort of understand it, it sort of rings a bell.
Right.
And I'm glad if that had that effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you familiar with any of the writings of Peter Kingsley?
Yes, I have. It's been quite a while since I've read anything by Kinsley.
I've only recently, and I heard his name from you, so
Yeah.
Okay.
I've started looking into his work.
Well, he's got a lot of depth, and he's not like the academics that
Right.
how would I put it? He's not like one of these uptight, just cerebral,
Hmm.
non-experiential academics. He's all for going past what the mind can discursively describe and trying to push you into a profound experience.
Hmm.
That's one reason I've liked him.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually he tends to get pretty pissed off at the academics and gets very insulting towards them. But that's just his style.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me, but
Hmm.
he's interesting. Another person that I found to be very kind of imaginative with respect to the different deities is James Hillman and
I've
his
seen
so-called archetypal
Hillman.
psychology.
Yeah, I've seen Hillman, and like you said, I think it was from my psychology studies. I don't know, that name is familiar, but I'm not sure if I've read any of his stuff. But I've seen Hillman before. I've seen
Well,
that
what
name.
he does is he takes Carl Jung's archetypal kind of ideas
I'm a huge Jung fan.
Same.
and he creates what he calls archetypal psychology, where he emphasizes that each of the archetypes is one of the gods or goddesses,
Mm-hmm.
and that they live themselves through us,
Mm-hmm.
and that we could discern their presences in our different kinds of behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and learn to honor them psychologically that way. So I think Hillman's he's a useful guy.
One
In
of
that
the
regard.
one of the interesting things, similar to what you're talking about, is whenever a new student receives their Thei in their first ceremony, when the oracle chooses, or they're chosen by their matron and patron, their god and goddess, um, their character as they do this daily devotion, you'll start to see traits that are associated with that particular divinity manifesting in them over a very rapid time. Like it's pretty profound for the most part. If they're doing the ritual the way they should be doing it, it's pretty profound. We had one. We used to call her Yaya. She was one of our older students, and she got Hestia as her matron, and she's like, I am the most unmotherly, like I don't do any of that stuff. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
And she developed this love as she was doing the rituals and studying Hestia and communing with her of cooking. And she would cook some of the most incredible dishes, Greek foods that she would bring to festivals, and the apple cider stuff that she would make for Thesmophoria was unreal. And she was like, I understand now why I have Hestia. She's like, I just never felt like doing this. She's like, but now that I've done it, she's like, I freaking love doing this stuff. And they start to
Wow.
manifest those traits. And the theory that we have and the way that it's worked over the last 30 years that we've been doing this is those two will become very important in your initial development. And then as you go through the Olympian cycle, you start to absorb those energies as well. And so over time, with the practice, you become more of a whole person, because we feel like the Olympians are really just the one divided, different aspects of that. And so you're basically accumulating them all back together, and it eventually leads you into that henosis where you commune with the one. At least we hope.
I think Proclus says somewhere that all gods are in all gods, and
Right.
they all there's some sort of interpenetration
Right.
if you really get through it. So the question, when your students do a ritual to get their mother and father god and leader, how do they discern who that is?
It's done through the Hermantic Oracle, and like I said, it's a tray. I'll send you some pictures
Oh, okay.
of the
Oh,
tray.
I see. So it's done in a way that it's not done by their personal feelings, but
No.
but it's
No, it's
through this
it's
ritual.
They're
it's done through this ritual
they're just
and an
there
oracle.
experiencing it.
They're experiencing
Right.
it.
No control over it.
Yeah, but no one
Right.
has any control over it. It's left strictly up to quote unquote chance, because
Yes, I get it. And
yeah,
then that way it's entirely outside
Hmm.
anybody's personal
right,
will.
right. And so the way that the oracle works is there's four circles of tortoise shell um, that are consecrated and blessed, and there's a plate that you cast them on, and one side is black and one side is white on each one, and they'll fall in specific patterns. And there's 16 patterns, just like in geomancy, but each pattern is associated with a god or a goddess. And so they will hold a black and a white stone in their hand. They don't know which. They'll shuffle them around. We do the ritual first, the ceremony. We cleanse, we consecrate, we bless the area, we make sure everything's pure, and then we start calling in the gods through the prayer and the chanting. And then we ask who chooses essentially this person. And you'll throw those shells down, and the pattern will fall. Each pattern has a whole slew of information that goes with it. And one of those things is if it's left hand or right hand. And so the pattern will have a deity, and then it'll tell me which hand. So I look at the person and I say, open your left hand, if that's what the pattern is. If they open their left hand and it's the white stone, then it means that's their attunement. They're in line with that pattern. If it's the black stone, that's not the correct deity, and they have to shuffle their stones again, and we do the chants and the prayers again, and then we throw the shells again, and then we do that until they get the white stone, until the alignment is there.
Right. And they also go through at least minimum 2 weeks of ritual preparation prior to this ritual,
Right.
to get them closely attuned with that energy current. So when we do the Thay rite, they're prepped and ready.
Right. They're more open to the,
Mhm.
the energies that are going to come in.
You know, talking to you guys, this is stunning to me. It's way more than I had imagined um, was going on, and I am completely impressed and appreciative that you're doing what you're doing, and I'm also appreciative that my work has helped to contribute to the
Instrumentally.
work you're doing.
Instrumentally.
A lot of people,
That's cool.
too, especially in this area, I've noticed, are so turned away by structured, organized religion,
Yeah.
specific ones, that they're so tired of it and done with it that it's hard for them to open up and accept anything else, just out of fear, I suppose.
Yeah. A fear of being controlled, but we're so damn liberal in the way that
Mhm.
everybody can
Right.
function. But I think
Well, I don't blame people for being resistant to a controlling institutional mindset. That's
exactly.
kind of healthy, I think, and you
Well,
probably
that's-
would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things, first class that any student comes to, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, before you do anything in this class, understand that I expect you to question every single thing that I tell you.
Yep.
Because this is about discourse and discussion. I don't want you to just learn what I'm telling you and spit it back to me. We're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. I'm going to explain to you why we feel this way, so that you can understand why we feel this way. Not just that we feel this way.
And that may be one of the differences between some of the ancient ways of looking at it, of them being the auditor
Right.
and saying nothing
Right.
and just listening. So
Yeah. They are encouraged and required, in all honesty, to
right,
debate every single thing that we discuss.
it helps us too to know
Yeah.
that they're understanding it
Yeah.
and grasping. Because if they're not, I mean, what's the purpose of us going through this?
Right. Yeah. You're not going to progress if you're just pretending.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I'm thinking about a lot of the academic people that I've met and how most of them are really deadly dull, I'd have to tell you, however, that I did enjoy Earl Fontenelle.
Mhm.
He's the guy that you heard me being interviewed by a while ago, there are some of these people who have a real kind of feel for the beauty and depth of these traditions,
Hmm.
and yet hardly any of them uh, take it to the level that you two have been taking it,
Hmm.
which is to live it
Right.
Hmm.
and have it shape your lives. And I'm really very moved by what you've been sharing with me. It's
That
very
means a lot.
impressive.
That means a
Yes,
lot to me.
absolutely. I think, I mean, anyone who studies and reads the ancient world, I mean, they they live these things.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any other way to go about it and to experience what they experience without that.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to live to to understand.
Yeah. It's
I
not
agree
something.
with you, but
Yeah.
I've been at a conference where I think we were talking about something that Plotinus said, and he said, something to the effect of, "He who's had the experience knows what I'm talking about."
Right.
Hmm.
And this very kind of conservative academic guy said, "Well, are you suggesting that you've had that experience?" And I said, "Yes."
Hmm.
And that's all I needed to say for them to decide that I was completely off the rails and
Hmm.
not worth listening to.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to experience it.
Right.
Right.
They feel as if that's breaking the rules.
Right.
Hmm.
They're supposed to keep it all at an arm's length and describe it like it's on some sort of scientific, lab work,
Hmm.
and
Right.
it kills it.
Yeah.
Monte, I used to hear him say this term a lot, and it was an armchair magician. Uh,
Yeah, right.
they
Yeah.
read about it and they study about it and they know all about it, but they never ever put it into practice, so they never truly understand any of it.
Hmm. I had a student once, Jonathan, and he not Jonathan, Chris, and he tells me he was studying with me for maybe 3 months, and he tells me that he's been teaching someone at work. And I said, "What are you teaching them?" And he says, "Well, about philosophy and stuff that that you and I know about." And I was like, "You and I know?" I said, "You've been here 3 months, man." I said, "I've been doing this for 27 years." And and he was a really young guy, and he says, "Well, yeah." He says, "But I understand it." I said, "You understand it, but you haven't lived it." I said, "Have you lost someone close to you, and your philosophy has carried you through that with joy? Like, you're not devastated at the loss of a person's life that was close to you?" I said, "Have you been through a relationship or a marriage or a divorce? If you've gone through the messy stuff that we were talking about before, and your philosophy was what saved you?" And he's like, "No." I said, "Well, then you haven't lived it yet." I was like, "So if you haven't lived it, you shouldn't be telling someone else about it, because you don't know for sure if it's valid."
Hmm.
I was like, "You think it's valid because I'm teaching it to you, but how do you know I'm valid?" And I fussed him. I said, "You're supposed to question me. You're supposed to be arguing with me."
You're
and
right.
and
Right.
and he could not get his mind
Yeah.
wrapped around that.
At the same time, we don't discourage people from expounding the knowledge that they receive.
Oh no.
Just make sure that you understand it
Yeah.
before you give it,
Well,
so
he
that it's
was.
not falsely done so.
Yeah, he was doing it in a kind of a haughty,
Right, right.
Right.
I'm
superior
sure.
way.
I suspected that a lot of that had to do with something about the demeanor of that particular
Right.
guy,
Yeah.
and that you sense that it was a little bit from I'm above and
The
I'm
ego.
going to dictate. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Yes.
ego.
The
And
ego.
you know what? I mean, we all have to keep an eye on that.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
you
Yes.
just reminded him of it,
Yeah.
which was good for him.
Yeah, and he eventually figured it out, but he didn't stay. He stayed for about 2 years. He studied for a good little while, and then he went his own way.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as they
Hey,
do.
listen, guys, I am,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm totally moved by this, but I just realized that I've kind of run out of gas. So I'd like to say goodbye, and
Yes.
Yes.
please send me. You have my email address, right?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I
Yes.
look forward to getting from you some of the stuff we've talked about, and this is the beginning of more communication, as far as
Yes.
I can
That's
see.
fantastic.
I hope that we can definitely. We only scraped the tip of the iceberg,
Hmm.
so I hope that we could definitely talk more in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we had this appointment. It was
Same.
very,
Yes.
very satisfying to me.
Thank you very much. That means
Yes.
a lot
Thank you.
to us. And we're going to let you get back to your life.
Okay,
Alrighty.
I appreciate it.
No
Take care,
problem.
guys.
All
You
right.
too.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.